Benny Lynch was a superstar. He was tough, he was quick, he was brave, and he took on everyone.
When the gong went, Benny Lynch went, bang, bang, wallop, and smashed the American to the floor, unconscious, just like that.
He was a wonderful boxer. I only wish he had the brain to act outside the ring as it did inside. Inside he was perfect. Outside he was a damn nuisance. He won the title at 22. 100,000 people came to see him in Glasgow when he arrived back. And yet he died on the street with nothing. How in hell did that happen?
More than 60 years after becoming Scotland's world boxing champion, and more than 50 years after his tragic early death at the age of 33, Benny Lynch is worshipped still in boxing circles and remains fresh in the minds of those who saw him box. A sporting legend and a potent Scottish icon.
Don't need a thing if you ain't...
But it's not only boxers who keep the Benny Lynch flame alive. A life marked in equal measure by greatness and tragedy has attracted many a biographer, all of whom have attempted to reconcile Lynch's talent in the ring with his alcoholism outside it. Now in the pipeline, there is a major film about Lynch starring Robert Carlyle.
Anybody who knows anything about Benny will know what an amazing story. He's Scotland's first world champion, flyweight champion boxer. He was dead at the age of 32. So it's a kind of rags to riches to rags story.
Well, I had written Looking After Jojo, and on the set, Bobby and I were talking about, possible films, and he said he'd always wanted to play Benny Lynch. And so I began researching the story, and the more I looked into it, the more compelling it became to me.
But the idea of committing Lynch's life to celluloid is nothing new. 40 years ago, Norman Wisdom saw huge potential in Lynch's life story.
It was such a sad story and a wonderful story. He was such a successful fighter, and yet it was such a sad story and a life, drinking, and that ruined his career.
Although Norman Wisdom had boxed for the army, he couldn't persuade his producers to cast him in a serious role.
I wasn't at all surprised that they said no. Of course, they looked upon me as a comedian, and that was it. Even for a person who wasn't even interested in boxing, it was a lovely dramatic storyline and sporting one, yes, and anybody who didn't watch the film and enjoy it must have been mental. I wish I'd done it. They didn't let me do it, and now I'm too old.
Benny Lynch was already Scottish champion by the time he travelled to Manchester to fight for the World Flyweight Championship in September 1935. A successful boxer when he left Glasgow, his star was about to burn even brighter and a rise to fame unprecedented for the time. Even the most optimistic never imagined the result that Lynch achieved the night he fought Jackie Brown.
The big fight at Manchester is on. Lynch, the slighter man with everything to win, Brown with curly hair defending his 3 flyweight titles, world, European and British. Brown is very confident, but Lynch, the former Glasgow messenger boy, is only waiting an opportunity to get in a powerful punch, and there it goes. Brown is quickly up again, but Lynch sends hm to the boards 4 more times in the first round. Watch his left hook. In the second round, Lynch goes on hitting and Brown goes on falling. 5 more times he goes down.
To put your opponent down 10 times in the space of 2 rounds before the referee finally has to intervene is quite an achievement. We were fighting at world-class level as he was.
Brown is battered and groggy. The Manchester boxer is dethroned and the referee stops the fight.
Being a world champion in those days meant a great deal more, and because there were less of them to win and much more difficult and much more opponents to beat. Also, there were only 8 champions, so a world champion had a lot more credibility than they have these days, because we have at least 4 champions in each weight division.
The sensation is too much for the Scots in the audience, who raid the ring to congratulate the new world champion. Listen to the row.
My teacher actually read a bit out of the paper. Scotland has its first ever world champion, and his name is Benny Lynch. And I can remember to this day, he said he won it in a big fight, and he defeated an Englishman, and we should all be very proud of this man. I was fascinated by the fact that he was only 5'3". I mean, I was about 4'9", but the fact that he wasn't a giant, but was the world champion. I mean, if you just look back to the man, his chest measurement was 33, his waist was 26, he was 5'3" high, and he weighed 8 stone. Now, we are talking about a 12-year-old child nowadays, a flyweight at 8 stone, and several of the world's great referees have said that he punched welterweight. That's like saying a middleweight punched heavyweight. You really must have enormous power.
His wrists were so small, you couldn't believe it. 5'1.5" and thin arm, thin leg, but he was as strong as a horse.
At that time, every kid, if you were interested in boxing, you wanted to be Benny Lynch. You know, that was the boxer you wanted to be.
He would be as big as Prince Nazim Hamed is now, and a better fighter as well. But that would be the scale you're looking at. I mean, he would be fighting in arenas. He'd be fighting in satellite TV, you know, broadcast live to the USA. In fact, he'd probably be fighting in the USA because he's so good.
An instant star. Every Scot wanted to toast their new champion. On his return to Glasgow's Central Station, 100,000 people lined the streets to hail their conquering hero. The city celebrated like never before.
The King and the Queen never got a better reception in Scotland than what Lynch got. From Central Station right over to the south side of Glasgow, where Benny came from, the streets were all covered with flags, flowers, and thousands of people. Benny sitting in an open deck car in the back and waving out and bowing to people. It was unbelievable.
There was a suggestion, of course, that the City Council give him some kind of welcome. They refused.
The city fathers didn't even give him a cup of tea.
Glasgow Corporation said, no, we don't want to know. Our first ever world champion.
The indifference of the city fathers was in marked contrast to the newsreels, whose cameramen were dispatched to cover Benny's every move.
Benny plays golf. He also indulges in a fast and furious game of ping pong. So fast it makes the spectators dizzy.
This is a very glamorous guy, you know. I mean, he loves clothes, he dresses brilliantly, cars. But what was a surprise to me was what a glamorous city Glasgow was at the time, between music halls, nightclubs, dancing, cinema, restaurants. All the images, all the places that he tended to go, there's a fabulous air of glamour and excitement just about the whole city at the time, which is a real contrast to the poverty that was, you know, equally apparent at the time.
Now married to Annie, his dance hall sweetheart, Benny left his Gorbals home. His winnings allowed him to buy a house in Burnside, one of the city's more affluent suburbs.
He lived down at Gloucester Avenue there. I don't remember the exact house, it was a long time ago, but it was definitely at Gloucester Avenue that he stayed. He moved up here in the mid-1930s, and these houses were just built about 1935. And they cost £500. McDonald's family fives, £500 for a 5-apartment semi. And they must have, I suppose, had 1 or 2 successful fights and made a little money and moved up here.
Up north, meet British and world flyweight champion Benny Lynch, in training to defend his titles on September the 16th at Glasgow's Shawfield Park against Southern champion Pat Palmer. Benny believes in hard training for a hard fighter.
Fueling all this fame and celebrity were Lynch's successes in the ring, and his world title fights brought a buzz to the city.
He attracted crowds of 40,000 to see him box at open-air shows at Shawfield Stadium. You know, you couldn't get 40,000 people at Shawfield to watch football on